Hey guys, it's Amber. Today I'm sharing part 1 of my Daniel Smith Swatch Book series. Each Daniel Smith color will have 3 videos: draw with me, swatch with me, paint with me. Today I'll be sharing part 1 where I show you how to tangle these patterns in your journal. Part 2 will consist of mixing and swatching my Daniel Smith watercolors, and I've chosen Phthalo Turquoise. In part 3, we'll put all of those mixtures to good use and do a floral sketch and watercolor. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss the next video in the series. Let's start with an overview of the products that I'm going to be using. I have a moleskin watercolor album here. Now, the sizing on this paper is pretty strong, so there are times where I feel like the watercolor doesn't absorb all the way. So I'm still on the hunt for a better watercolor journal. Let me know if you have one in the comments down below. This is a Sakura Micron PN pen. Now this has a plastic nib, that's what PN is. And that means that you're not going to, if you're heavy-handed with your drawing, you're not going to push the nib back into the pen, which can sometimes happen with your typical Micron pens like this one. So this is a Micron 08, also by Sakura. Both of these pens, all of the Micron pens have the same ink in them, so you can use them interchangeably. My favorite is the PN. Here's a Pigma Pen 05, and this is the same as the PN pen. Same size nib, same plastic nib, it's just a different style. And then the Pigma Graphic 1 pen is my favorite to fill in large areas with black ink, and again, that's the same archival waterproof ink. Then I also have a number 2 pencil. We actually won't use this today along with the Tortillon because I'm not going to shade the Zentangle journal page until after I'm done with the watercolor. Here's a flip through of what I've done so far. So this is French Ultramarine, and this was the first study that I did. So I took French Ultramarine and mixed it with all of the 27 colors in my Daniel Smith watercolor palette. Here's my quinacridone rose study, and you can see that I really spread out the drawing and took advantage of all of the space on the journal page. So I'm using this to practice my Zentangle patterns and also to learn more about my Daniel Smith watercolors. This was just a journal page that I did when we went to the beach. And this was just another practice page for Zentangle, just practicing some new patterns that were new to me. And I'm not sure if I'll use that for swatching or not. Probably not, because I filled up a lot of the space with tangle patterns. As always, there's a link to the supplies list in the description below. So most Zentangle tiles, those are small square pieces of paper or different sizes of paper, or in my journal, I start off with 4 dots, one in each corner, and I just connect those with a line. This gives me a nice border on the page, which allows me to add some labels for each of the colors and then also put a title on the page so that I know what color study it is. Now, typically with Zentangle, you don't use any kind of template. This is just a circle template. I just wanted to kind of section off some of these areas so that I could have a few different sections to work in tangle. These I think I'm only using this because it's new. It's a new tool that I have and I wanted to use it. But these circles don't even need to be precise because I don't even use up the whole circle. After I have my layout, or kind of like this skeleton of different areas, or the string as they call it in Zentangle, I'll start with my first pattern, which is Gourdgeous. This pattern was developed by Zentangle Incorporated, and I will have a link to all of the sources of the patterns down below so that you can get the individual instructions for each of those. You start off with a small loop and then an S shape. And then this pattern is all about the principle called aura, A-U-R-A, and that's where you echo a line. So in some cases, I'm echoing or auraing the whole line, or I'm picking and choosing. So you can see I have 3 lines here now, and this is going to alternate. So I'm going to fill in every other line with black ink. And this is a high contrast pattern. This is what they call a drama tangle. So each individual Zentangle pattern is called a tangle. And this is a drama tangle, which means there's a lot of high contrast in it, and it makes a lot of impact on any composition that you're adding it to. So I've switched over to the Graphic 1 pen because it has that larger nib on it. That means I can fill in these spaces much faster than trying to use an 01 or this Pigma pen, which is an 05. So I'm going to speed this up a bit. And so every other stripe, I'm going to fill it in. So here you can see I'm kind of not echoing the whole line anymore. I'm just doing part of it. So I want this to end up looking like a gourd shape. And I want this to kind of bow out on the other side. So I'm just changing the insertion point where I start that stripe. And I'm going to start to bring those stripes underneath the gourd to give it some volume and fullness underneath. And I'll draw 2 more of these so you can see it a couple times. So I am a certified Zentangle teacher. I have been since 2017, I believe is when I got certified. And I used to teach classes monthly. I'm not teaching classes currently. But again, if you subscribe to my channel, I hope to do several of these types of videos with my swatching and share those with you guys. So as I'm doing each page, I'm going to try and do different Zentangle patterns. So you should pick up some good information in these videos. I'm going to slow this down again so that you can see it in slow speed. So here I am working with the principle of Hollibaugh, or drawing behind the other elements. So I'm stopping when I get to that small gourd, picking up the line where I have this free space again. And this is going to make it appear like this largest gourd of the pack is sitting behind the other ones. This is a great way to add dimension and depth to your compositions, and also varying the size of your elements makes a huge difference. You can see that I changed the direction of the small gourd. And sometimes changing the direction is harder than you might think. I usually will create an S shape like this gourd is when I'm doing my loops and S shapes, which is interesting because an actual S that you draw goes the other direction. So usually you'll find that the direction, there's a preferred direction or one that's more comfortable for you, and you want to make sure that you practice the other directions. It's good for your brain just to even do that. So try both directions, try varying the sizes. When I'm learning a new pattern, I usually do what they call a monotangle. So I'll fill a journal page or a small tile with just that one tangle, and maybe Tipple as a filler tangle. You'll see that next. And I'll play around with the size and kind of distort the image and just get to know it. So I have my 3 Gourdgeous patterns here, and I'm going to add Tipple. So Tipple is a filler pattern. So where Gourdgeous is a focus or focal pattern, you know, it's going to be that one that really reaches out and grabs your attention. Tipple is a filler pattern where you can fill in small areas or spaces with almost like a background pattern. So here I'm just adding small circles. I'm varying the sizes. If there's any space in between each one of these circles, I'll fill it in with some ink. So again, I'm adding more contrast to the piece. I'm going to move on to TunnelVizion, which was created by Jody Genovese. And again, I'll have that pattern source listed down below for you. And it starts with, you can do these as a straight kind of tube, or for me, because I'm pairing it with Gourdgeous, I decided to change the shape of TunnelVizion so that it looks more like a gourd also, that kind of goes with this pattern. So you start with your shape framework, and then you're just filling in, you're just drawing these little bands. I try to make these bands match the shape of the gourd. We'll call it a gourd, or the tube. And I just link those back up with that original line. Let's do another one in normal speed so that you can get the hang of the pattern. So you start with your framework. So I'm starting with mostly a straight tube. It's a little bit thicker at the base. Draw an oval at the top, add a little half moon shape in there and fill it in, and then aura or echo that line. Then you're going to start drawing these bands. So you're going to get a smooth line if you start your stroke on that original framework line that you put down and then end on that framework line. It's called take off and land. So you're going to take off on that original line and then land and kind of lift your pen off and you'll get a nice smooth stroke. So again, I like to have odd numbers of these, so I'm adding another one here. Now my whole composition with the focal pieces has 6, so you could add another one of these TunnelVizion to get to an odd number of 7 if you like. And then I just added a few tipples in there, like they're like little pebbles that are stuck in between these gourds. So I'm done with that corner. We'll move on to the second little circle here, and I'm going to use Oysteroid, which is also by Jody Genovese. So this is kind of a fun little pattern. So you start off with an irregular shape, and then you kind of echo that down on the bottom and you fill that in. So this is creating almost like a plateau or like a little cliff surface, and you're going to just fill that in. So you're creating this drop shadow underneath this irregular shape that you made. Then we're going to aura this shape. So I'm going to start off pretty close at the top, and then as I get towards the bottom, I'm going to put more space in between the line that I'm drawing and the original pattern. This is going to create foreshortening, so this is going to add greater dimension to this stack of rocks that we're creating here. And it really doesn't matter at all what shape you make this your original shape. You're just going to keep mimicking that shape as you go down. It's a little bit harder for you to see this pattern, but again, I'm going to show this several times. After I filmed this, I did figure out how to take a second B-roll on my phone. So hopefully in the future videos, I'll have 2 viewpoints to be able to show you guys so that you can see the pen on the paper a little bit clearer. So you can see they're getting larger, and as these kind of like little boulders and plateaus get larger, I add more space at the bottom. And again, that's going to help with the dimension. This is a really simple pattern, so I'll put on a bit of music and I'll catch you back for the next pattern. Sorry that you couldn't see some of that. I do think the second view is going to be much more helpful. Just my hand gets in the way sometimes. Before I get to my next pattern, I wanted to go ahead and put a title on this. So this mixing and swatching is going to be for Phthalo Turquoise. And all of my colors are going to be with Daniel Smith. So I will mix Phthalo Turquoise with 29 other colors. I think I have a total of 30 colors in this study. For my next section, I'm going to do a tangulation of Tri-roda, which was created by Eni Oken. And a tangulation is when you change up the pattern to be different. And I'm adding this circle in the middle, which kind of mimics the TunnelVizion that I did over on the other side. I just liked the idea of being able to see down into these little shapes. So I started the pattern with this uneven circular roundish type shape, and then I put a circle up near the top of that, and I'm radiating these S shapes out from this circle. I'll show you this a couple times so that you get the hang of it. Because I put the circle up at the top, it's creating this foreshortening effect to add greater dimension to the shape. So in Zentangle, you kind of use the same principles over and over and over. So once you learn it, you can apply it to different patterns. So here I'm just connecting those S shapes and leaving like a little gap in between them, almost like a gap in between petals on a flower. And I'll go back in and I'll add weight to those areas. So I'm going to darken up those areas so that it looks like it's casting a shadow. That adds greater dimension in between those segments and helps to separate them. I'll do the same thing in the middle, and I'll actually create a little bit of that half moon like we did in TunnelVision, but this time I'll put it on the back side, and I'll just darken that area so that looks more like a lip and like it's tunneling down into this little shape. So I'll start with that unusual shape. You can totally do that with a pen. I went ahead and did mine with a pencil since I want to make sure this works out. And I'm using those S shapes again. So there's just a few elemental shapes in Zentangle: a line, a circle, an S shape, a C shape. And if you can do those shapes, you can really do any Zentangle pattern. So here I'm connecting those S's. And I drew this one behind the other one to create that depth, and I'll just weight some of these lines. So I'm going to darken it up in between each one of these segments, and then I'll make the little opening a little darker on the back edge as well. So I decided this little section needed another pattern as well, and to kind of create some cohesiveness, I'll go ahead and add one of the Oysteroids and I think one of the TunnelVisions as well. So I'm just doing a small one here. So the border that you create on your page that I made with the 4 corner dots and the lines, that's a suggestion of a border. Of course, I don't want to go over my border and interfere with the title of my page. I want to keep that so that it's legible, but jumping over the border in any of the other areas really adds a little more interest to the design, the overall composition. So that's totally okay to do. The border is really just a suggestion of where your piece stops. So I've got the Tri-roda, the TunnelVision, the Oysteroid, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of Tipple here, making one a little bit longer, kind of looks more like a little stone more than a pebble, and that will finish up this section. One of the things that you'll notice with all of my patterns when you use the links below and you go and look at the original patterns, mine look different. I kind of tend to add my own style to each one of the patterns. That's totally okay and actually recommended for you to do. Add your own style to whatever pattern you're learning. Maybe you like to tweak it a little bit or you like it a little bit different. And this is a good example of that. So now I'm doing Sand Swirl by Karry Heun, and this first one totally doesn't look anything like Sand Swirl for the most part. I got super swirly in there, and then also this dark black part that I'm putting in now isn't part of the Sand Swirl pattern as it was originally created, but you know, this first one just got away from me, so I kind of just made it my own and did my own thing. So Sand Swirl starts with a little swirl like that. I typically darken the center, but you certainly don't have to. And you want to do them in different directions. You can change the number of auras or the echoed lines that are around it. So the first one I had 4 or 5. This second 2, I only did 3 auras around it. So again, you do this little swirl, and then you're going to echo that line and come down. And you can echo that original shape as many times as you like for what you feel like fits the piece. Again, you want to vary your size, you want to vary your direction, vary the number of echo lines, kind of do all of that, and it just makes it more interesting. I think the more of this particular pattern you have in one space, the better. It kind of looks a little more interesting. Here I have some empty spaces, and I'm just going to fill those in with black ink so that it adds more contrast to this little area here. I'll pop on some music while we finish this section. So I darkened up areas because I felt like this section needed as much contrast as the others. And I'm going to create a rectangle here underneath the Phthalo Turquoise heading so that I have a place to put just straight Phthalo Turquoise. I want to put it in mass tone there and then do a gradient of it. And now I'm going to start adding all of my sections for my color mixes. So I've counted out how many times I'm going to mix it. I'm going to have 30 colors. And so I'm going to use the pattern Hollibaugh. That's a pattern that was created by Zentangle Incorporated, actually from Molly Hollibaugh, which is one of the founder's daughters. And again, I change up this, I do a tangulation of this too. So I don't think I do any of the patterns exactly the way that they were intended to do. I add my own little spin on it. For me, I really like it when Hollibaugh has curved ends on it. Now, typically Hollibaugh has almost like a pickup sticks type of style to it, where all of these little sticks are bisecting each other, they're under each other, over top of each other, and kind of crossing each other in all of these ways. Like you threw down your pickup sticks and you've just got a bunch of sticks there, right? A pile of them. For me, because I'm using this for swatching, I'm not going to intersect them very much. I'm really just using them to create negative space. So I want 30 sections of negative space that I can put these color mixes into. So as I'm going along, I'm kind of counting how many I have. And for now, I'm leaving the ends open in case I do need to bisect any of these areas. And once I know I have 30 segments, then I'll go ahead and start connecting some of these like you see here. So here I knew I needed one more. And I think this is all I need. And then I'll go ahead and start closing up some of these lines that are on the border. Normally at this point, I would go ahead and start shading the piece, but I don't want to have graphite on here as I'm trying to swatch my watercolors. So I don't shade this journal page until I'm done with all of the watercolor and the watercolor is dry. So here's our journal page, and in our next segment, we'll be doing the mixing and the swatching, and this is how it'll turn out. I hope you guys enjoyed this project today and are looking forward to part 2. I know that there are some film angles that I need to switch up for next time, so there's already a few things that I want to change the next time I do one of these series. So let me know what you think in the comments down below, and if you feel like you learned something from this video, please give me a like and subscribe down below if you haven't already. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you soon with more inspiration.